Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they use data to solve the world's problems, highlighting different job titles that are data related that you might not have thought of before. And of course, we always include some fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. So today we have the wonderful Kristen Kehrer. Welcome with us today. How are you, Kristen?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So typically on our show, because we're nerds, we start off kind of with a comic book theme and understand people's origin stories. So if you could, please let us know about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yeah, so actually I was sort of a tough kid, and my parents said that I had to go to college or don't come home. And it's funny because I think that if I did as well as I did in high school now, I probably wouldn't get into college. But my parents applied to school for me for math. They thought that there'd be less demand and that I'd be more likely to get in. And I went and I fell in love with it. And I finished my degree in 3 years with a 3.8 GPA. And of course, I wasn't going in with any extra credits. I've never seen an honors course in my life. And yeah, I just fell in love. And I studied all the time. And, a couple years later, I went back and I got a master's degree. Actually, it was because we were in the middle of the Great Recession, right? The housing bubble burst, and I was working in real estate, doing, data and like administrative stuff, sort of a hybrid in real estate. And I knew that I was going to be laid off eventually. And so it was like, I'm going to go hide in academia. So I went back and I got my master's degree in applied statistics. And I actually didn't have to apply for a job. Somebody from the company I decided to work for came and said, I need a statistician to do econometric time series analysis and forecasting. Do you have anyone? And the job was like 3 miles from my house where I grew up. So I took that and lived at my parents' house for a while and really enjoyed learning about the utility industry. And then I spent some time in healthcare, but it was more like motivating people to get their colorectal cancer screening. So it was like, motivating people's behavior. And so then I moved into e-commerce, where I worked on like a subscription product, doing advanced analytics, and then the one-time purchase products. I worked on site analytics, and after that I moved to Constant Contact, where I worked on, so that is an email marketing solution. So it was very similar, but it was a senior data scientist role, but where I found myself was with my previous job. I had the digital product I was working on was a website builder. So now I had a website builder for life. And now I had worked at Constant Contact. So I had email marketing for life. And I decided that I was going to start creating content. And I built up my own email marketing list. So I have my email list. I built up a website. I eventually moved over to self-hosted WordPress, but I built up a business for myself. And then in January of 2019, I went out on my own and, almost completely replaced my corporate salary as a data scientist, doing freelance data science and consulting. And then, of course, there was COVID. And now I am a developer advocate for Comet.
Amazing. Now, growing up, did you always enjoy math, or is that just something that your parents were like, she's going to school for math?
It was my best grade on my report card.
Okay.
My parents would go to parent-teacher conferences, and the math teacher would come up to them and be like, "Are you happy with your daughter's grade?" And they're like, "It's the best grade on her card." And the teacher would just be like, "She doesn't study, she doesn't come to class," But so, I've always had sort of an affinity for math, for sure.
That's good. I'm glad that they knew to sign you up for math. I was advised growing up, I really enjoyed math as well. I was advised to go into accounting. So I went to school for accounting and realized way too late that accounting has nothing or very little to do with math. And that's what led me into auditing and got me into security, risk, and compliance. But anywho, so I'm so glad that you had that experience. You built up your math background, and that led you to where you are today. Specifically, you mentioned that you're a developer advocate. Can you go into what that means and your main roles and responsibilities with that title?
Yeah, sure. So Comet is software that allows you to track your machine learning training runs and monitor your model in production. So I'm sitting in that MLOps space, and my role specifically is doing anything that's going to evangelize the product and let people know how they can benefit from making their models reproducible in Comet. So I do that through hosting the Cool Data Project Show. I speak on podcasts, obviously. I'm very present on social media, and I'm constantly building projects. I'm talking about them and how I used Comet to help me do this easier. Last week, I spoke at Open Data Science Conference. And it's a super fun role, and I feel super fortunate that these are the things that I'm doing every day, for sure.
Yeah. How was that conference? What was your presentation on?
So my presentation was on, I put YOLO V8 on a Raspberry Pi 3, a Pi 4, and a Jetson Nano. And I used YOLO V8 to do object detection of my dog. So it wasn't so much that I needed to detect my dog, but I was able to look at what's the different inference time between the different devices. So the Nano was 9 times faster than the Raspberry Pi 4. And it was sort of a journey how I got here. I had started with the bus project, and then I said, okay, well, I can take that and I can put it on a Raspberry Pi and, put it on a product, put that model on a product to detect something else. And then it became, well, I've got it on a Raspberry Pi 3, that had been in my basement for 8 years. So it was oh, well, what does it look like on a Raspberry Pi 4? And then it became, well, a Nano's the same price point. What does that look like? So really the project was all just around comparing the different devices and seeing what object detection looked like on these, and there was a number of things that I had to do to get the devices working.
Mm-hmm. So with projects like that, data looks a little bit different than kind of when you're, taking a Udacity or whatever edX course, right? So what does the data look like with those types of projects?
Well, so this was actually my first time working with image data, and it's certainly so much easier than working in corporate with a corporate database, right? And I've been allowed to, make huge mistakes along the way. When I first started with the bus project, it was, I'm downloading pictures of buses from the internet. I'm taking video of the bus passing my house on the phone, and then really through hosting the Cool Data Project Show, I'm talking to other people in computer vision, and they're like, no, you don't want pictures from the internet because you're going to be introducing orientations and colors and things that just aren't even going to exist. And so when I finally got it working well, it was because I was using, frames that were generated from the actual camera that was going to be detecting the bus and annotating those myself and then training the model on that. But so that's sort of what the data looked like. And the data too, I put this model down for a couple months because the bus doesn't go in the summer, right? School gets out for the summer. I put the project down for the summer. I picked it up in September, and I was like, oh my God, where is my data? Because I had gone through all those steps of downloading the data, adding other images, adding images from my phone. And it was, there was all these files, and I couldn't find, the right set of images. And so now I make sure to use like a data artifact and track my data lineage, which you can do in Comet, like plug for Comet. But in general, like, you know, I can think about all those times and, you know, even in corporate where I'm doing these projects and they get complicated and over time they evolve and you have multiple versions of the data. And then you wake up one day and you put it down for, you know, a couple days and then they say, oh, you got to give that presentation again. And you're like, what did I do? You know, like they're like, no, go back and do this ad hoc question. And it was like, yeah, with what data set? You know, so I've learned a ton. I've learned a ton about data. The data definitely looked different to me because I had never worked with computer vision before, but yeah.
That's awesome. I want to talk more about some other projects that you're working on, but kind of your personal projects. So I think this is a good segue into our fun bits.
Ooh.
The first project that I want to talk about, you just recently posted that you are working with your daughter on a Roblox game.
Yes.
Can you put it more into that?
Yeah, so I don't even know where the idea came from, and we've only been working on it for a couple weeks. It's a horse game, so you're going to be able to like train, ride, you're going to learn more about horses, you can compete. But it's like perfect for working with my 8-year-old because you there's like models. So I'm learning Blender, which I had used for the Pill Popper project where I was putting the Raspberry Pi on a thing. I 3D printed a structure, which I had to use CAD to create a 3D structure. Actually, my husband created that structure. That's why I'm struggling to learn Blender now. But you know, it's been like a recurring theme in the house, learning Blender. But so some of the models are in there that you can use. So you can take a barn and put it on there, which of course, like my 8-year-old now really gets to contribute to, but also we're able to talk about, so, you know, when you have a horse, you then need to script, like, do the horse's legs move? Do, you know, like all the things, they all need to be scripted. And it's, it uses the language Lua, which,
okay.
Have you heard of that?
No, I was thinking Unity because I know my husband builds games too, but he uses a platform called Unity. I don't know if that's the platform or the language, actually.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you know all these things too. But
yeah, I'm a pro.
So it's been super fun. We've been having family meetings, and you know, we talk about like what's the first increment of work we're going to do, and what's feasible, and when might we be able to launch it, and you know.
I absolutely love that you turn this into a family project. Do you have a Kanban board in your kitchen?
Yeah, actually, that's why you see the black marks right there.
Okay.
Because I took the whiteboard off the wall for
Got
this.
it.
We could talk about it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Any interesting lessons learned yet from the game development? Or are you still kind of in the beginning stages of it?
I mean, everything has been a lesson because I've never done it. For some reason, I just really enjoy doing projects that I know nothing about, that I have like really no business doing. It's like, if I know how to do it, I'm not interested. I got to go do that thing over there that I have no clue about. You know, and I've also set up the Enchanted Hooves social media channels. So, you know, I'm just starting to see what other horse games are on the market, what sort of following they have, how they're marketing themselves, how we're differentiated. And yeah, so all the things. But I mean, certainly learning Roblox Studio, like I knew nothing about it. Nothing. So yeah, it's all been a learning curve the last couple weeks. And we get, you know, excited every time the horse has like new functionality. It's like, look, the horse can walk.
Yes. Well, you'll need to learn how to turn it into a unicorn and make it fly. So once you get there, you need to give me an update.
Okay. When the horses can fly, I'll let you know.
Yes. Now, I want to kind of get into like the soft skills, the more like skills that you obtain in your hobbies that translate to these types of data projects. And we kind of have something in common in our hobbies and our outside activities when we're not in our office. And we both like to and enjoy dancing. I know you specifically, you do your gymnastic stuff. I do hip hop and pop dancing. But I think those skills are very relatable and parallel to what you do during a data project. What are your thoughts there?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So right now I do adult gymnastics. I'm in an adult jazz class and I do pole dancing. But I think that as a dancer, like you really learn to, you have your pageant smile and you learn to like entertain with your face. And like carry your, like just, the way you present yourself is different. And so I think that there's absolutely value there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think especially you mentioned that you take jazz class, so you would understand like choreography, right? So when you're learning a choreography, you have different steps that you need to take. One comes before the other, right? Much like in a data project with a data lifecycle, there's stuff that needs to happen in front of the other. And then also specifically when you're moving, you need to know like how to transition your body in order to effectively go into the next step, right? So I can see that when you're building your data pipelines, just making that more effective and automated. Yeah.
For sure. I was definitely thinking at it more like coming from the angle of like presenting as a data scientist. And yes, you're always thinking about like, what's my next move? How am I going to present my body? Like, what do I need to be thinking about? And like a lot of that stuff is something that's like certainly practiced in dance.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, do you have any projects that are dance related coming up?
Oh, I do. I mean, I'm hoping it's supposed to be prioritized for this quarter, but also LLMs have gotten so popular that, may have to transition. But I was really hoping to use YOLO V7 for pose estimation. And I wanted to splice together some videos of me and my daughter doing different flips and such and see how the algorithm works when people are upside down or doing bodily movements that typically its model isn't trained on and doesn't typically see. Yeah. So, because that's, I'm just like into the like weird questions. I only like answering weird questions.
Right? I mean, that's the fun of it because when you're working on a data project, you really should have a question in mind first. You could go into a data set and explore for hours upon hours, but you don't really accomplish anything, right? So having that question is key.
Yeah, and you don't want to be data snooping, so.
Data snooping. I love that.
Is that a new term to you?
That is. Did you not make it up? Who made it up?
No. That's in the stats world. It's a very common thing when you like beat the data to death without having like a question in mind, and then you find something and it's like, well, is that like a spurious correlation or is that like actually a real result? Because if you dig enough, you'll probably find something,
Interesting. So is it kind of just the fun evolution of causation versus correlation?
I think that it is like a bit, how if you make a bunch of comparisons, you're supposed to adjust your alpha for that, right? And like if you're just like combing through the data, you can think about how, you've already checked so many things that you're looking for and slicing and dicing by every single variable, right? And so it's this thought that like, you can't just find something and walk away with it.
Yeah. Interesting. So then when do you stop? Is there like a best practice of like you tried 10 things, or do you know what I mean? Like instead of keep going and exploring.
I mean, I think it's that you set your hypothesis up before you go into it, and you say, okay, like I reasonably expect this variable to have an effect on this, and so I'm going to go dig into that. Or, because if you just take a data set and you look at everything, sure, you might find something and then decide that you're going to like set up a test to say, okay, maybe this is real and it's not just like something that has happened in my data, but you wouldn't want to just run with something that you happen to find by casually looking through the whole data set.
Yes, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're learning new things, because it seems that every project that you're on, it's something completely new. How do you start? Like, what resources do you turn to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I actually always start with blogs because a lot of times it'll be somebody that has like already done something similar, and I really want the hand holding. I don't necessarily start with somebody's GitHub. I want like, the article that's going to say, the merits of using this library over using a different library. And so the first place that I go to is YouTube tutorials as well, because and a lot of times they'll be out of date and I'll get stuck somewhere and it'll cost me some time or whatever. But I'm really honestly looking for like the easiest way to do something. I'm looking for the solution that somebody else has already figured out. And then, like I recently played with semantic video search, and, the tech that they're using is a lot newer. And so now there isn't tutorials and I have to read the paper, and, that's fine. I'll read the paper. I'll, do the other things, but where I'm starting is the blogs, the YouTube, going on Reddit if it fits, and doing a search for what I'm looking for and seeing, if somebody's already asked the same question, because on Reddit is where, this is an actual tip. Reddit is where you'll get the best advice. I post something on LinkedIn, and there's people that are going to like cheer me on and are really excited for me and are interested. But like on Reddit, you post that same thing and they're like, well, why the hell did you choose that algorithm?
That's very true.
And so like it really pushes you to think, and that's the place where I really grow is on Reddit.
Do they usually give back negative feedback, or do you oftentimes find positive feedback as well?
Yeah, so I feel like there's a big stigma around Reddit, right? That it's like a lot of NSFW and, a lot of other stuff. But my personal experience has been really great, especially in the computer vision subreddit. So each of the subreddits definitely has their own like feel to it. But for not having, I have like 24 followers on Reddit. Like there's nobody over there. So for having like no audience on Reddit, I can still post something cool that I do in computer vision and get like 300 upvotes and like 30,000 reach, which is, as somebody who also obviously knows about like reach and engagement, that's really, really good for not having an audience. And so my experience over there has been fantastic. I've gotten like really good constructive criticism and feedback. I get upvotes when I'm fishing for them. Every once in a while, I've gotten somebody say something really strange. People probably assume I'm a guy, so I'm just like another dude on Reddit. But then when I have like posted videos with my face, I've gotten like, I want to wear your skin or whatever, but like, the value is there.
Hopefully you learn from those weird comments.
Yeah. No, awesome. It doesn't like affect you when you're like so used to posting on social media. Like it's just, I just keep it moving, like it's really hard to phase me on social.
Yeah. What are your favorite subreddits that you follow?
Ooh, no, that's like a really hard question, because how I ended up on Reddit originally was like for building custom keyboards. So it was the mechanical keyboard subreddit, and like there's a couple other keyboards I've built back there. So I go to Reddit for everything, actually. But the computer vision subreddit is my favorite. Learn machine learning is really good. The data science subreddit, for some reason, I find that like I share things and it can really go either way.
Okay.
They're not always interested in what I have to share over there, but there's a ton of people. The ML ops is really good too, just because that's like sort of what I'm interested in, So yep. Those are definitely the ones I'd send people to. I'm not sure if other people are necessarily interested in ML ops or computer vision, but good subreddits if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Do you follow Data is Beautiful?
I do. Okay. I do. There's not as much activity there, though. I also follow like the data memes. I've found some like stuff there before to share on LinkedIn.
I bet that one's really good. I'll have to visit that one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, do you have any other final words of encouragement, recommendations, tips, tricks for the listeners?
I mean, I always say that like the way that I keep up with the space these days is by being active on social media. And it doesn't matter if you're on Twitter, Reddit, LinkedIn, and just being there is going to passively give you information about, what are new libraries that you might want to check out. Not that you want to go after every shiny object, but all the libraries that I'm using these days, I found somewhere at some point, right? Like they were the shiny object at one point. And so I've learned a lot about, especially like, when something new comes out for explainable AI, or, 9 or 10 years ago when we first started seeing things like, I don't know exactly what year Pandas profiling came out, but like, these different packages to make EDA really much easier. Like now all of a sudden, right? It's like one day, all of a sudden you have these packages available to you. And I find that I'm able to, and even like, keeping up on changes in the industry. Like now we don't use stepwise regression for reducing the number of features we put into our model. And I honestly wouldn't have known that if it wasn't for Twitter. Like I see things that are valuable, and I think that it is very important for people to be at least a lurker in the community. Nobody needs to go creating content. But if you're looking to get into like the extra sexy jobs, like you probably do want to be working on projects that are going to interest another company, unless you happen to have like a really great job where you're like working on really awesome things that are going to be really appealing to another company. But I know for me, when I was a data scientist, there was lots of stuff that I did that like wasn't as sexy. So, when you're trying to, position yourself, think about ways that you can and even being involved in the community and lurking, like I have absolutely heard things that I have then regurgitated in interviews. Like it's there. And you're also seeing how other people interview. And when you do projects and you tag the companies where you either used their libraries or software, they notice, and and other people notice. Oh my God, I posted my computer vision project and like the bus one the first time, and I had people just like so in my inbox, obviously because of that post, like recruiters, somebody asked me if I wanted to like work on some project with him for a startup. And I was like, yo, like, I'm not that person, but like that attention, it does exist and is there on social.
Great recommendations. So share on social media. That's great. Thank you so much, Kristen. If anybody has any questions, where can they find and or follow you?
Oh, I am on LinkedIn constantly. So that's Kristen Kehrer. Search me on LinkedIn. I'm there always. And then I have a blog, Data Moves Me, where I talk about, different projects that I'm doing and how I did them, or other topics in data science.
And then you mentioned about enchanted hooves.
Oh, yes, Enchanted Hooves. So, at Enchanted Hooves on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so very much, Kristen, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. And as always, folks, happy learning.